Welcome back, my Space Room friends. We have a fun activity planned. So we are going to do a float and sink experiment, all right? So when something floats, it sits on top of the water, right? Instead of going to the bottom, it stays on top of the water. So when something floats, it sits on top of the water. It doesn't go down to the bottom. When something sinks, it goes down to the bottom, right? So float is when it stays on top, sink is when it falls to the bottom, okay? So float and sink are opposites. Float is the opposite of sink. Sink is the opposite of float, all right? So again, when something floats, it just sits on top of the water, and when something sinks, it falls to the bottom, okay? So I have some objects here, and we are going to see if they sink or if they float. So I have some nail polish. I have a marker. I have a penny, a jewel, a fork, a pen, a nickel, popsicle stick, an eraser, and a bottle cap, all right? So those are the objects that we are going to see whether or not they sink, fall to the bottom, or if they float, if they sit above the water, okay? So let's go ahead and do our experiment. All right, friends, so the first object we are going to use is this marker. So I want my friends to make a prediction, to predict or guess whether this marker is going to sink or float. So I want all my friends to make their guess. Is this marker going to sink or float? Let's find out. I'm gonna put it in the water. Can my friends see what's happening? Do you see the marker right here? Did it go to the bottom? Nope, it is floating. So our marker is floating. Let me give you guys a better look. My friends see that that marker is floating on top. So the marker floats. All right, so we saw that our marker floats. Let's see about the nail polish. Do you guys think the nail polish is going to sink or float? Make your prediction, make your guess. Sink or float? Let's see. What happened? The nail polish sinks, right? It fell to the bottom. So our nail polish does not float, it sinks when put in water. All right, friends, so we just saw that the nail polish sinks when we put it in the water. Let's see about this bottle cap. Here is a water bottle cap. Do my friends think it is going to sink or float? Make your prediction, sink or float. Let's see. Can my friends see what happened? Did it sink to the bottom or is it floating? It is floating, so this bottle cap floats. So we saw the bottle cap floats. Let's see about our jewel. Do you think our jewel will sink or float? Sink or float? Let's see. Can my friends see what happened? It sank all the way to the bottom. So we know that our jewel does not float, it sinks. All right, friends, so we saw that our jewel sinks when we put it in the water. Let's try our nickel. Do you think our nickel will sink or float? Sink or float? Let's see. What happened? Our nickel sank all the way to the bottom, so nickels sink when we put them in water. So we just watched our nickel sink to the bottom. Let's see about this eraser. Do you think our eraser will sink or float? Make your prediction or your guess. Sink or float? Let's see. Do my friends see what happened? Our eraser also sinks. It went to the bottom of the container. Let's watch that again. See, it went all the way to the bottom, so our eraser sank. So we just watched our eraser sink. Let's try this popsicle stick. Do my friends think that this will sink or float? Sink or float? Let's see. It floats. Here it is at the top of the water, and look, it's getting its yellow coloring in the water. It's dissolving the color off. So our popsicle stick floats. All right, what about our penny? Do you think our penny will sink or float? Sink or float? Let's find out. Ready? Here it is at the bottom of the container. So we know that pennies sink. What about this pen? Do my friends think the pen will sink or float? Make your prediction. Sink or float? Let's find out. The pen floats. Here it is, sitting on the top of the water. It's floating, and look, it's getting its ink in the water. So pens float. All right, our last object is this fork. What do my friends think? Will this fork sink or float? Sink or float? Let's see. Oh! It sank. It went all the way to the bottom. So this fork sinks when put in water. All right, friends, so there you go. Now we know which objects sink, which means go to the bottom, and which objects float, so they sit above the water. So remember, sink and float are opposites. So the objects that sink when placed in water: jewels, erasers, nickels, pennies, nail polish, forks. The objects that float: bottle cap, marker, popsicle stick, and a pen. So friends, you guys can try this at home with some objects. So see which objects sink and which objects float. Have fun!